We are going to pick up in Mark this morning, just before the passage I read at the beginning of the service. It's talking about something that happened on the road as Jesus and his disciples were going to Jerusalem. And we're going to start in Mark chapter 10 with verse 32. And they were on the road going up to Jerusalem, and Jesus was walking ahead of them. And they were amazed, and those who followed were afraid. And taking the 12 again, he began to tell them what was to happen to him, saying, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles. And they will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him. And after 3 days he will rise." Now, it's odd how Jesus does that. I don't believe it's just Mark's rendition, because we see it other times when Jesus refers to himself as the Son of Man. That, to a Jewish person, would have screamed Messiah. When he refers to himself as that, he often talks about him, like he's talking about somebody over there. It would be as though I said, and Pastor Phyllis is going to go up to Market House, and when she does, she's going to park across the street at the post office, and when she's done with that, she'll go to the bank. I would never say that. You'd look at me and think, what in the world? But in a way, Jesus was trying to help them see, I'm here as this man, but I'm God. I'm the Son of Man. I am the Son of God. I am the Son of David. I'm the Messiah. And that's what's going to happen to me. Because we all know that story of how they ran and thought he was dead and all those things. And really, he pretty clearly, right there, he didn't say he was dying on a cross. But other than that, they have the details right there. And it says early in that passage that people were afraid. And I think they were afraid because they could see, with the level of miracles Jesus had been doing, with the things he was doing, there was going to be some kind of outbreak. It was going to be a revolt. Something was going to happen. This was Passover week. And we don't quite have the same sense of that in our culture, but Passover week, everyone came home to Jerusalem. All the Jewish people would try to get there if they possibly could. The city was just swollen with people staying with their relatives, staying every possible place they could, camping out in little tents around the city. It was a crazy time. And during times like that strange things happen. People, get out of control. They do silly stuff. And they were afraid for Jesus. They were afraid for themselves as his followers. Picking up in verse 35, James and John, after just hearing what Jesus said, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came up to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." Now, what a loaded question. Sometimes I'll have people come up and say, "Would you do me a favor?" And I'm kind of, I don't want to say, "Sure, I'll do you a favor," and then they say some impossible thing. Well, he says to them, "What do you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one on your right hand and one at your left in your glory." And Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you're asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or to be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized?" And they said to him, "We are able." And Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." So when Jesus talks about the cup that he drinks, it's a word picture similar to communion, but in the day when he was speaking, to drink a cup had to do with your life. It was what you were going to experience. The idea of drinking from a cup said, you really want to go through what I'm going to go through, the same with baptism, the idea of going under the water and coming out. They had baptisms for all kinds of things. They took ritual baths. They did things differently than we do. Same thing, it was a picture of what Jesus had just described to them. This is how the Son of Man is going to be lifted up. This is how he's going to be glorified. He's going to be killed. He's going to be mocked. He's going to be spit on. They're still anticipating, though, that he will be, because of his miracles, because of what they've seen in his life, they're anticipating he's going to be king. And they want to make sure that they don't lose their spots in the sun, that they right along with him are like, ruling and reigning and having all the glory. There's another spot where it says that their mother asked Jesus the same question. They were people who were really looking to elevate themselves, their families, their standing, and really not to put them down. They wanted to make sure they got to stay close to Jesus. There's nothing wrong with that. But Jesus says, do you realize what you're asking? And I don't know, you can think about that as we read the rest, but I don't think they had a clue what they were asking. I think they were people who really were having the best ride of their life. Nothing like this had ever happened to anyone in their family before. They were with this amazing Jesus guy, and when they joined him, they had no idea what this 3 years was going to be like, and they don't know it, that it's almost over. He's told them this clearly, that this bad thing is going to happen. But many of us have been around people who often, see the glass as half empty or always worrying or something. Maybe they thought it was that kind of behavior. I'm not sure. But they did not take seriously when they said, sure, we can drink the cup you're going to drink. We can take the baptism you're going to experience. It wasn't going out to the Jordan River and being dunked. It was the idea of the suffering, the beating, the mocking, the spitting, the put-downs, all the things he was going to experience, the shame, the just pain of it. He was saying, can you do that? You really want to be with me right with that? I find it's interesting in verse 40 when he says that was not his to grant. It's because it is for those for whom it has been prepared, which says it's already set into place how that will be. It's not changing now. It's, God already has a plan, and it's interesting when you think about that. He's not saying, I haven't decided who that's going to be yet. That's not the point. Maybe it would be James and John, but he's saying that's already set in place. That's not for me to change right now. Verse 41, and when the 10 heard it, so I don't know if they were holding back and overheard it. Did you hear what they're asking again? Him, his mother was doing that. Now he's asking again. When the 10 heard it, they began to be indignant at James and John. And Jesus called them to him and said to them, you know that those who are considered rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. But it shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant. And whoever would be first among you must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. This passage has been used to teach all kinds of things, like how we should get along in the church, we should serve one another, and there are many of the writings of Paul that say that very same thing. But here, Jesus is predicting, saying, this is not how it will be in my church. People are not to try to rise above others and walk over them to get where they want to be. You are not to think of people who are and somehow elevated in your eyes as the greatest. In my kingdom, in my church, those who are willing to serve just as I, He was saying, Jesus Christ, I am here to serve you. People who are great in my kingdom are servants. Now, that's not something that you can just take on and say, oh, I want to be great. There's a kid song. Oh, if you want to be great in God's kingdom, be the servant of all. Well, you can't really do that. You can do it for a little while, and it starts to chafe and rub and feel pretty uncomfortable. And you start to get resentful. Like, why am I doing this? They don't appreciate it. They don't even notice. And so it's not that we say, I will choose to be a servant. There's a little bit of that in there. But it's that we say, I will do whatever you call me to do, God. So somebody who to you or I might seem to have a very elevated position, let's just say President of the United States, gets to have the great, band plays when he comes out, and security, and everything you might possibly want, he has. And even though now there are lots of people mocking him, but for the most part, nobody would say, I don't want to be president, because people might say something mean about me. I mean, we know that it's a pretty big deal job. If you are president of the United States or king of the world or whatever your position is, it's saying do that as a servant, not as lifting yourself up, but thinking, I serve only God. And there's something about this that's just so freeing, it's unbelievable. If you had a job mowing lawns, let's say, and underpaid, underappreciated, people come out and complain, want you to do it over, don't give you a tip, it's a terrible job. And, no matter how you do it, somebody's going to complain. You threw the gravel over on the neighbor's side, you broke the window, whatever. Can't you mow the lawn right? People are not very appreciative of lawnmowers. But if you're not mowing lawns for the person who pays you, you're mowing lawns for Jesus Christ. You're doing it because you feel God said, mow lawns. That's what I want you to do. And you're doing it not for the money you're paid, not because people are nice, because they're not. You're doing it because you want to serve God that way, to be the servant that He's called you to be. Then no matter what people say to you, that's not really what's important, is it? I mean, it's the idea, at the end of the day, when you stand before God and say, I did what you called me to do, people didn't like it much. They weren't very appreciative. I was never president. I never even, got much, but I did what you called me to do, God. If you can stand before God and say that, that's a life well lived. I'm not sure I can. I'm still getting there. Because I'm not the person I'm describing here. I do whine and complain. I get my heart broken a lot. I do feel sad. Ed Patrick is constantly, every time I see that man, he tells me about Chuck Saunders, who just passed away, and tells me I should be like him. If it's public, he's not so obvious about it, but he always is telling me what a great guy Chuck Saunders is, no matter what happened, no matter how mean his church board was to him, no matter how, he was always seen as the bad guy and trying to do it right. Chuck Saunders always was positive and smiled. I think, well, I don't know if I have enough years left in my life to ever get the Chuck Saunders Award, but anyway, I get what Ed is saying, because when you are serving God, no matter what it is, changing diapers, washing dishes, all those things. I used to get kind of muddled down in that too. You probably think, why did you ever think you want to be a pastor if you can't even change diapers with a good attitude? But I'm a pastor not because I'm so skilled, but I couldn't not be. God called me and said, this is what I want you to do, so here I am. But no matter what you do, sometimes, it will feel like you're not appreciated. Think of this right here. Jesus just said, I'm going to die. People are going to spit on me. They're going to mock me. I'm going to die. And these two best guys come up and say, well, would you do what we want you to do? We'd like to make sure when you're in your glory that we get to sit on your right and left hand. You'll be thinking, what didn't you just hear that I just told you I'm getting ready to be killed and all kinds of stuff? But Jesus, is God. And he doesn't put them down. He's not sarcastic. He doesn't say, you guys are just impossible. Forget it, I'm leaving you. He just explains, in our group, who we are. He says, we don't worry about what seat we have. That's not we don't worry about who's getting the glory or the honor for things. He said, even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. You can read libraries full of books about what that means, to give your life as a ransom for many. And depending on what school of thought you were taught in, that can be, a really loaded statement. But we're not going to go into that too much today, other than to say, Jesus died for my sin, for your sin. He gave his life freely. He gave it so that we could be free. Picking up in verse 46, and they came to Jericho, and as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stopped and said, call him. And they called the blind man, saying to him, take heart, get up, he's calling you. And throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. And Jesus said to him, what do you want me to do for you? Same question he asked his disciples just a little before. And the blind man said to him, Rabbi, let me recover my sight. And Jesus said to him, go your way, your faith has made you well. And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him on the way. Jesus, when he said to his disciples, what do you want? What do you want me to do for you? They had just said, Jesus, we want you to do whatever we say. What do you want is still the question we are being asked today. And as I was reading in my own devotions, getting ready for Easter, thinking about just what I've asked you to do this week, as I was reading, thinking how this went, what that week must have been like, all loaded with miracles and cursing the fig tree and on, going in the temple and turning over the tables and all the things that happened that week. I was thinking, really, most of us, just like James and John, do not really know what we want. We pray for things. We pray sometimes based on spiritual blindness. We may pray for a good outcome and don't realize to get that, there's a cup to drink. There's a baptism to go through. There's life to live to get to that. It's not just like that. You don't pray to God and say, fix this, make me this, give me this position, do this for me, fix my family. It's always a process. The part that comes instantly, just like Bartimaeus, who did know what he wanted. He was blind. He said, Jesus, I want to see. That comes instantly if you say, God, I want to see. I want to see it your way. I want to see what you want for my life. I want to see what you want for my family. I want to see what you want for my job. I want to see what you want for whatever the prayer is that's on your heart this morning. The sight comes to you. We rarely ask for sight. We think we already know what we need. And it's just somehow this arm-twisting game to say it just right or just enough times to get God to hear our prayer and give us what we want. Never praying for the vision, for the sight, for the ability to see it God's way. And I just encourage you today, let this Easter be just a game changer for you in your relationship with God. It's not about trying to work up an emotional sense of, oh, I really came to church and felt good after that. You can get that at a good sporting event, at a really good concert. Nothing to do with God. You can go away, your endorphins will be high and you'll feel good. The lasting thing that God gives you is your sight to see it His way. And no matter how good the things I pursue are, no matter how good the works, the neighborly stuff, the NA groups, the potluck dinner you bring a dish to, the person that you do something for, no matter how good that is, it's not anointed, God-focused work without asking Him into your life and saying, show me, give me my sight, let me see it your way.